Hi, I wanted to introduce you today to an article in the American Educator that appeared in the summer 2008 issue by my colleague at Stanford, Claude Goldenberg, that's titled Teaching English Language Learners What the Evidence Does and Does Not Say. I'm going to venture a guess that this article is going to be one of the more seminal articles in our field for some time to come. The research that's reported here isn't really Claude's own, although he did do some of the research in it himself, but it's really a synthesis of several national reports that were recently issued. One of them, this big fat thing called Developing Literacy in Learners, it weighs several pounds, and it's subtitled Report of the National Literacy Panel on Language Minority Children and Youth, edited by Diane August and Timothy Shanahan. And the other is a book somewhat more modest in length, but called Educating English Language Learners, and this is also known as a CREED synthesis. CREED is the Center for Research on Education, Diversity, and Excellence, co-located at the Center for Applied Linguistics and the University of California at Santa Cruz. And this book is edited by Fred Genesee at McGill University, Catherine Lindholm Leary at San Jose State, Bill Saunders at Cal State Long Beach, and Donna Christian at the Center for Applied Linguistics. I'll tell you a little bit about the method that was used there, but really just to give you a preview into the substance of the report itself. Claude does a great service because nobody really wants to sit around and read these things, which I should say was based on a precedent set by this other thing, which is called the National Reading Panel, a study that was also a synthesis of research on reading in these were monolingual English speakers, but really tried to apply this sort of scientific approach of research synthesis. And he really says there are really three main conclusions you can draw from the research, and then there are other things that you cannot yet say there's scientific evidence for. The three things that he for which he says there's good evidence is, one, teaching students to read in their first language promotes higher levels of reading achievement in English. So native language instruction, also known as bilingual education, is effective, as shown by the studies reviewed here. The second, what we know about good instruction and curriculum in general holds true for English learners as well. So what's good for English learners or I should put it the other way, what's good for all students is also equally good for English language learners. Things like well-organized, clear, explicit instruction, etc. And then the third point is when instructing English learners in English, teachers must modify instructions to take into account students' language limitations. So some of the things that this first book on the National Reading Panel found for strategies that help reading comprehension in native English speakers, such as monitoring one's comprehension, summarizing, asking questions of the text as you go along. Some of those strategies aren't effective when they're applied to English learners who are in their early stages of learning English. That their oral language development is important. So that modification of instruction has to happen for those students. The whole movement behind why these big fat books have come about, I should say, is founded on a movement known as scientific research in education. And here's a book by the National Academy of Sciences put out by the National Research Council called Scientific Research in Education. There was and still is a great interest in the policy and education community over why it is that education research tends not to have the kind of credibility that, let's say, scientific research might have in the field of health and medicine. And there are many reasons why there are differences between health and education. But one of the debates has been over methodology. That is, should one give equal weight to studies that use the so-called gold standard of scientific methodology, use of randomized assignment and comparison of treatment and control groups over, let's say, case studies or clinical observations of instruction. And that's a healthy debate that's going on. This book by Richard Shabelson and Lisa Town, Scientific Research and Education, takes the wise approach, which says that science is not defined by the particular methodology that's employed, but rather by the quality of the questions that are asked and the ability of that question to be assessed, evaluated by objective evidence. And that objective evidence may be experiments, but may not be. It could be a case study. It could be the exception that that proves the rule. And so that interest in looking at studies that meet certain methodological criteria is what was applied in these research syntheses. So they paid more attention, say, to studies that used higher quality evidence, judged methodologically, but in all cases applied to important scientific questions within education, such as what promotes reading achievement in English, etc. I think it's very important to point out that the field of education is a public field in which many people hold opinions. People feel entitled to express opinions about the right way to teach reading, to teach math, to teach English language learners. And so in this field in particular, it's I think the burden placed on scientific evidence becomes even more important because people bring political biases and views to this issue much more than to others. And so I felt that giving you this little bit of a preface as to why this article and the ideas proposed in Claude's important article are important and relevant for us as educators as we move forward in identifying best practices to educate English language learners. So I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy the course, and thank you for allowing me to babble on and on about this. Thank you. Really hard to juggle these things.